When people ask me if I have children, I used to pause. Technically, no. Biologically, no. But in every way that mattered, in every sleepless night, every scraped knee, every tear wiped away, every tuition payment and birthday cake and whispered prayer, I had a daughter. Her name was Ashley. She came to me when she was 9 years old, wearing a dress 2 sizes too small and clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. She looked up at me with those big brown eyes, still swollen from crying at her mother's funeral, and she said, "Aunt Maggie, am I going to live with you now?" I knelt down, took her small hands in mine, and I promised her something. I promised her that she would never feel alone again. I promised her that I would love her like my own. I promised her that everything would be okay, and I kept those promises. For 19 years, I kept every single one of them. What I didn't know, what I couldn't possibly have imagined, was that while I was keeping my promises to her, she was quietly, methodically, systematically destroying everything I had ever built. By the time I discovered what Ashley had done, she had stolen over $400,000 from me. But the money, as devastating as that was, wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was realizing that the girl I had raised, the girl I had loved more than my own life, had never loved me at all. She had only ever seen me as a means to an end. My name is Margaret Collins, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 54 years old, and I live in a small town about 40 minutes outside of Philadelphia. I've lived here my whole life, actually. I was born here, went to school here, met my husband Derek here, and buried him here 8 years ago. Derek and I tried to have children. We tried for over a decade. We went to specialists, tried treatments, spent money we didn't have on procedures that didn't work. By the time we were in our late 30s, we had accepted that it wasn't going to happen for us. Derek said it was okay, that we had each other, and that was enough. And for a while, it was. We built a good life together. Derek owned a small chain of hardware stores, 3 locations across the county. I managed the books, handled payroll, dealt with vendors. We weren't wealthy by any stretch, but we were comfortable. We had savings, a paid-off house, modest investments. We were careful people. We planned for the future. We worked hard, and then my sister Patty got sick. Patty was 3 years younger than me, but she always seemed older somehow. She had Ashley when she was 23, with a man who disappeared before Ashley was even born. Patty raised that girl alone, working double shifts as a nurse's aide while putting herself through community college. She was scrappy, my sister, a fighter. But when the cancer came, it came fast and hard. By the time they found it, it had already spread. She had maybe 6 months, the doctor said, maybe less. I remember sitting in that hospital room holding her hand, and Patty turned to me with tears streaming down her face and said, "Maggie, I need you to promise me something." I told her I would promise her anything. She said, "Take care of Ashley, please. You're the only one I trust. You're the only one who can give her a real life." I didn't hesitate, not for a second. I told her of course I would. I told her Ashley would be loved and protected and given every opportunity. I told her to rest easy about that. And Patty did rest easy. She died 3 weeks later, peacefully, knowing her daughter was going to be okay. Derek and I brought Ashley home the day after the funeral. She was so small, so quiet. For the first few weeks, she barely spoke. She would just sit in the corner of the guest bedroom, which we had hastily transformed into a little girl's room, and she would stare out the window. I didn't push her. I just made sure she knew I was there. I would bring her snacks, sit with her in silence, read books aloud even when she didn't seem to be listening. And then one night, about a month after she moved in, I heard a sound coming from her room, crying, soft, muffled crying like she was trying to hide it. I went in and found her curled up in a ball, her whole body shaking. I sat on the edge of her bed and rubbed her back, and she turned around and threw her arms around my neck and sobbed into my shoulder. "I miss my mommy," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart," I said. "I miss her too." We cried together that night, and after that, something shifted. Ashley started talking more, smiling more, eating more. She started calling me Aunt Maggie less and just Maggie more. And then, about a year later, she looked up at me one morning over breakfast and said, "Is it okay if I call you Mom?" I had to excuse myself to the bathroom because I didn't want her to see me cry. When I came back out, I said, "You can call me anything you want, sweetheart. I'm yours." And that was that. She was mine. The next several years were good ones. Better than good, actually. They were the best years of my life. Ashley flourished. She was bright, curious, full of life. She made friends easily, excelled in school, joined the drama club and the debate team. She had this magnetic personality that drew people to her. Teachers loved her. Other kids wanted to be around her. Derek adored her. He would take her to the hardware stores on weekends, teach her about tools, let her ring up customers at the register. She called him dad too, eventually. Not all the time, but sometimes, and it was enough to make him tear up every single time. We were a family, a real, genuine, loving family, and I thought we always would be. When Ashley was 17, Derek was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. It was devastating. He was only 52. Over the next 4 years, I watched the man I loved slowly disappear. He forgot our anniversary. He forgot how to run the stores. Eventually, he forgot my name. By the time he died, he didn't even know who I was anymore. I was holding his hand when he passed, and he looked at me with this confused expression and said, "Who are you? Are you here to help me?" I said yes. I told him I was there to help him, and he smiled, and then he was gone. Ashley was 21 when Derek passed. She had just graduated from a small liberal arts college in Massachusetts with a degree in business administration. I had paid for the whole thing, of course. I was happy to do it. She was my daughter. That's what parents do. After Derek died, I had to make some hard decisions. The stores were losing money because I had been too focused on Derek's care to manage them properly. I ended up selling all 3 locations to a regional chain. After debts were settled, I walked away with just under $700,000. Combined with Derek's life insurance, our savings, and some investments, I had a little over $1 million to my name. More than enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life if I was careful. And I was always careful. I had always been careful. That was the problem. I was careful about everything except the one person I never thought I needed to be careful about. After the stores were sold, I hired an accountant to help me manage my finances. His name was Vincent Torres, and he came highly recommended by a friend at church. Vincent was meticulous, professional, and honest to a fault. He set me up with a diversified portfolio, helped me understand my tax situation, and gave me quarterly reports on everything. He would sit with me in my living room, spread papers across the coffee table, and explain every number, every transaction, every projection. He treated me with respect, never talked down to me, never made me feel stupid for asking questions. Over time, he became more than just my accountant. He became a friend, a trusted advisor, someone I knew I could count on. And thank God for that, because without Vincent, I never would have discovered what Ashley was doing. Without Vincent, I would have lost everything. For the first few years after Derek's death, Ashley was wonderful. She moved back home for a while to help me through the grief. She got a job at a marketing firm in Philadelphia, commuting back and forth. She paid rent, helped with groceries, kept me company during those long, lonely evenings when the house felt too big and too quiet. We would cook dinner together, watch movies together, talk about her work and her friends and her plans for the future. She wanted to start her own business someday, she said, a consulting firm, something to do with social media marketing. She had all these ideas, all these dreams. I encouraged her every step of the way. I told her she could do anything she set her mind to. I told her I believed in her. When Ashley turned 24, she told me she was ready to move out. She had found an apartment in Philadelphia close to her job, and she was excited to finally have a place of her own. I understood. It was time. I helped her move, bought her furniture, paid her security deposit. She protested at first, said she could afford it herself, but I insisted. What was the point of having money if I couldn't use it to help my daughter? Besides, she had her whole life ahead of her. She would need her savings for more important things. For the next 2 years, I didn't see Ashley as often as I would have liked. She was busy with work, busy building her life, and I didn't want to be the kind of clingy parent who demanded constant attention. We talked on the phone a few times a week, texted regularly, and she came home for holidays and the occasional Sunday dinner. It was fine. It was normal. It was what happens when children grow up and move on. I focused on my own life. I volunteered at the local library. I joined a book club. I took up gardening. I traveled a little, visited friends, tried to stay active. I was doing okay, not great, but okay. And then, on her 26th birthday, Ashley came to me with a proposition. She said she was finally ready to start her consulting business. She had a business plan, she said. She had clients lined up. She just needed some startup capital. How much? I asked. She paused. $50,000. I didn't even blink. I wrote her a check that same day. Looking back now, that was the beginning. That was when the floodgates opened. But at the time, I didn't see it that way. I saw a young woman with ambition and drive, chasing her dreams the way I had always encouraged her to. I saw my daughter, the girl I had raised, asking for help, and I saw no reason to deny her. The business, she told me, was going to be called Brennan Creative Solutions. She even showed me a logo, a professional looking website, business cards. She talked about her plans with such confidence, such enthusiasm. She knew the industry, she said. She had connections. This was going to work. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She had never given me any reason not to. 6 months after I gave her that initial 50,000, Ashley came to me again. There had been unexpected expenses, she explained, equipment, software, licensing fees. She needed another 30,000 to get through the launch phase. I gave it to her. 3 months after that, she needed another 25,000 for a marketing campaign. I gave her that too. And then there was the matter of her apartment. The rent was too high, she said. It was draining resources she needed for the business. Could she move back home for a while, just until things stabilized? Of course, I told her, of course she could. She moved back in a week later, bringing boxes of clothes and shoes and things I didn't remember her having before. Nice things, designer things. I didn't think too much about it. She was a young woman in a competitive industry. She needed to look the part. Appearances mattered. I understood. What I didn't understand, what I failed to see, was that while Ashley was supposedly struggling to get her business off the ground, she was living a lifestyle that made no sense. The clothes, the shoes, the handbags, the jewelry, the expensive dinners she would mention casually, the weekend trips with friends to places like Miami and Vegas and New York. Where was the money for all of that coming from? I asked her once, gently, just curious. She laughed and said some of it was gifts from a guy she was dating, some of it was work expenses that would be reimbursed. She made it sound so reasonable. She always made everything sound so reasonable. That was her gift. She could tell you the sky was green and make you believe it. She could look you straight in the eyes and lie without a single flicker of guilt. I know that now. I know it because I have replayed every conversation, every interaction, every moment of the last few years over and over in my mind, looking for the signs I missed. And they were there. They were always there. I just didn't want to see them. 1 year after Ashley moved back in, I got a call from Vincent. He sounded concerned. He said he had noticed some unusual activity in my accounts and wanted to come over to discuss it. I told him, of course, come by whenever he was free. He arrived that evening with a folder full of printouts. He spread them across my kitchen table and showed me a series of withdrawals I didn't recognize. Small amounts at first, a few hundred here, a few hundred there, but growing larger over time. $1,000, 2,000, 5,000, all from my savings account, all from accounts I rarely checked because I trusted Vincent to manage them and I trusted myself to live within my means. Did you make these withdrawals? He asked. I stared at the numbers. I shook my head. No, I said, I didn't. Vincent's face went pale. Then someone else has access to your accounts, he said. Someone who knows your passwords, your security questions, your personal information. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I knew in that moment, even before I wanted to admit it. I knew who it was, but I wasn't ready to say it out loud. I wasn't ready to face what that would mean. Vincent suggested we do a full audit. Go through everything, every account, every statement, every record. It would take time, he said, but we needed to understand the full scope of what had happened. I agreed. But first, I made him promise not to say anything to anyone. Not yet. Not until we knew for sure. He gave me a strange look, but nodded. He could see how shattered I was. He could see that this wasn't just about money. This was about something much deeper. We started the audit the next day. It took us 3 weeks to piece everything together, and what we found was worse than I had ever imagined. The $50,000 I had given Ashley for her business, it was gone. Not spent on the business, but transferred to other accounts, personal accounts, accounts in her name that I had never known about. The 30,000 for equipment, same thing. The 25,000 for marketing, never spent on marketing. It had been used for shopping sprees, restaurant bills, plane tickets, hotel rooms, the business itself, Brennan Creative Solutions. It didn't exist. The website was fake, set up with a template anyone could buy for $50. The logo was from a stock design website. The business cards had never been handed out to a single client because there were no clients. There had never been any clients. The entire thing was a fiction, a story Ashley had invented to extract money from me without raising suspicion. But it didn't stop there. The unauthorized withdrawals from my savings account totaled over $90,000 over the course of 18 months. She had been siphoning money slowly, carefully, in amounts designed not to trigger any alerts. She knew my accounts, my passwords, my security questions. She knew them because I had trusted her completely, because I had added her as an authorized user on some accounts years ago in case of emergency, because she had access to my home office and my files and my computer. I had given her everything, and she had used it to rob me blind. The total, when Vincent and I finally calculated it, came to $412,000, almost half of my life savings, half of what Derek and I had worked our entire lives to build. Gone, stolen by the girl I had raised as my own daughter. I sat at my kitchen table staring at those numbers, and I felt something inside me break. Not just sadness, not just anger, something deeper. A fundamental shattering of the person I thought I was and the world I thought I lived in. I had been a fool, a trusting, loving, naive fool. And Ashley, the girl I had held as she cried for her dead mother, the girl I had tucked into bed and helped with homework and cheered on at every school play, that girl had looked at me and seen nothing but a wallet. Vincent asked me what I wanted to do. He said we had enough documentation to go to the police. This was fraud. This was theft. Ashley could face criminal charges, prison time even. I told him I needed to think about it. I needed time. He didn't push. He just gathered up his papers, patted my hand, and told me to call him if I needed anything. After he left, I sat alone in my house for hours. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, thinking about everything, replaying the last few years in my mind, and somewhere in those dark hours, my grief began to harden into something else, something colder, something more focused. If Ashley wanted to play games with me, if she thought I was just a stupid old woman she could use and discard, then she had another thing coming. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I wasn't going to let her destroy me without a fight, but I wasn't going to be reckless about it either. I wasn't going to confront her in a fit of rage and give her a chance to cover her tracks or play the victim. No, I was going to be smart. I was going to be patient. I was going to gather every piece of evidence, understand exactly who I was dealing with, and then I was going to expose her for what she truly was. And I was going to make sure that when the truth came out, there would be nowhere for her to hide. The first thing I did was change my passwords, all of them. Every account, every login, every security question. I did it quietly, methodically, making sure Ashley wouldn't notice. I told her my bank had sent me a notice about a security breach and I had to update everything as a precaution. She nodded, barely paying attention, tapping away at her phone, probably texting the boyfriend I hadn't met yet. The one who, according to her, showered her with expensive gifts. I wondered now what other lies that relationship contained. I wondered if there even was a boyfriend, or if that was just another story to explain away the money she was spending. The next thing I did was install monitoring software on my home computer. If Ashley tried to access my accounts again, I would know. I would see exactly what she was doing and when. It felt strange. Setting a trap for someone living under my own roof, it felt wrong, like I was betraying her. But then I would remind myself of those numbers, $412,000, and the guilt would fade. A few days later, Ashley announced she was going out with friends. She wouldn't be back until late, she said. Don't wait up. After she left, I went to her room. I had never done this before, not even when she was a teenager. I believed in privacy, in trust, in respecting boundaries. But those beliefs seemed quaint now, almost laughable. She had violated every boundary there was. The least I could do was look through her things. What I found made me sick. Bank statements showing account balances far higher than any marketing job could explain. Credit card bills with charges at jewelry stores, designer boutiques, high-end restaurants, receipts for cash withdrawals, some of them matching the dates and amounts stolen from my accounts. And tucked away in a folder at the bottom of her desk drawer, I found something else. A notebook, handwritten, pages and pages of notes, calculations, and plans. It took me a while to understand what I was looking at. But when I did, I had to sit down because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. The notebook was a record, a detailed, meticulous record of everything Ashley had taken from me and everything she still planned to take. She had mapped out my finances with terrifying precision. She knew about accounts I had almost forgotten about. She knew about investments, about properties, about an inheritance from Derek's parents that I had never touched. She had notes on my health, my habits, my routines. And at the back of the notebook, in handwriting I recognized as clearly as my own, were the words, "Timeline for full access, 2 years." She wasn't just stealing from me. She was systematically working to gain complete control over everything I had. And once she had it, once she had full access, I didn't want to think about what came next, but I had to think about it. I had to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I photographed every page of that notebook, every statement, every receipt, every piece of evidence I could find. I put everything back exactly where I found it. And then I went downstairs and called Vincent. It was late, almost midnight, but he answered on the second ring. I told him what I had found. I told him I thought Ashley was planning something bigger, something beyond just stealing money. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Maggie, I think you need to talk to a lawyer, not just for the fraud, for protection. This sounds like someone who might try to take control of your assets entirely." "What do you mean?" I asked, even though I already knew. "I mean power of attorney," he said. "Guardianship. If she can convince a court that you're incapable of managing your own affairs, she could become legally entitled to everything. It's not easy to do, but with the right circumstances, the right story." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. I understood. Ashley wasn't just a thief. She was planning to take everything, and she was planning to do it legally, using the very trust I had placed in her as a weapon against me. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the last 19 years. Every hug, every conversation, every moment of connection. Had any of it been real? Had she ever actually loved me? Or had I always just been a resource to exploit? I wanted to believe there had been something genuine there, at least in the beginning, but I didn't know anymore. I didn't know what to believe about anything. The next morning, I called a lawyer named Diana Frost. She had been recommended by Vincent, and her specialty was elder financial abuse. A terrible phrase, but one that apparently applied to my situation. I met with her that afternoon at her office in Philadelphia. It was a sleek, modern space, very different from my cozy, cluttered house. Diana was in her early 50s, sharp-eyed and no nonsense. She listened without interrupting as I laid out everything: the money, the fake business, the unauthorized withdrawals, the notebook, the apparent plan. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied me for a long moment. "You have a choice to make," she said finally. "You can go to the police right now with what you have. There's enough here for criminal charges, fraud, identity theft, unauthorized access to financial accounts. She could be arrested, prosecuted, potentially sent to prison." I nodded slowly. But but if you do that, you might never get your money back. Criminal cases focus on punishment, not restitution. You might see her face consequences, but your bank accounts won't be any fuller. What's the alternative? Diana leaned forward. "We build a civil case. We document everything, follow every trail, find out exactly where the money went and who else might be involved. And then we sue. We go after her assets, her accounts, her boyfriend if he's been complicit. We freeze what we can before she has a chance to hide it, and we leverage the threat of criminal prosecution to negotiate a settlement. It's slower, it's messier, but it's your best chance at recovering what you lost." I thought about it. The idea of going to the police was tempting. I wanted Ashley to face consequences. I wanted her arrested, exposed, humiliated. But Diana was right. The money mattered too. It wasn't just about principle. It was about my future, my security, my ability to live the rest of my life without depending on anyone. I told Diana to build the case. I told her I would do whatever it took. The next few months were some of the hardest of my life. I had to continue living with Ashley, acting as though nothing had changed, while secretly gathering evidence against her. Every dinner together, every casual conversation, every affectionate "good night, Mom" was a knife in my chest. I smiled, I played along, I pretended to be the trusting, oblivious aunt she thought I was. And all the while, I was documenting everything, photographing receipts, recording conversations when I could do so legally, tracking her movements, building a paper trail that would eventually bring her world crashing down. During this time, I finally met the boyfriend. His name was Ryan Marshall, and he was exactly what I should have expected. Handsome, charming, smooth in a way that felt rehearsed. He showed up at our house one Sunday afternoon to pick Ashley up for brunch, and he greeted me like we were old friends even though we had never met. Mrs. Collins, it's so wonderful to finally meet you. Ashley talks about you all the time. You're like a saint, the way you took her in after everything she went through. I smiled and shook his hand and said something polite. But I watched him carefully. I watched the way his eyes lingered on the artwork in the hallway, the antique furniture in the living room, the expensive Persian rug I had inherited from Derek's mother. He was assessing the place, calculating its value. I recognized the look because I had seen something similar in Ashley's eyes 1,000 times without understanding what it meant. These two were partners, I was sure of it. Whatever scheme Ashley was running, Ryan was in on it. Maybe he had even helped her plan it. After they left for brunch, I did some digging. I used every search engine, every public record database, every social media platform I could think of. Ryan Marshall, it turned out, had quite a history. Bankruptcy at 23, a civil judgment against him for fraud at 25, multiple addresses across 3 states in the last 5 years, no apparent job, no steady income, yet somehow living in a nice apartment and driving a new car. The picture was becoming clearer. Ryan was a con artist. Ashley was either his partner or his student, and I was their mark. The rich, lonely widow with no children, no close family, and no one to protect her. They must have thought they had found the perfect victim. They must have thought I would never catch on. And the truth is, if it hadn't been for Vincent, if it hadn't been for one accountant who actually paid attention to the numbers, they might have been right. The thought made me furious. Not just at Ashley and Ryan, but at myself. How had I let this happen? How had I been so blind? Diana, my lawyer, cautioned me against self-blame. You're not the first person to be deceived by someone you love, she said, and you won't be the last. These people are professionals. They know exactly how to exploit trust, how to manipulate emotions, how to make you doubt yourself. The fact that you caught on at all puts you ahead of 90% of victims who never figure it out until it's too late. It was cold comfort, but I appreciated the sentiment. Diana had been busy too. She had hired a private investigator, a former FBI forensic accountant, to trace the money Ashley had stolen. It wasn't easy. The funds had been moved through multiple accounts, some overseas, some in cryptocurrency, some converted to cash and spent on things that couldn't be recovered. But the investigator was good, and slowly, piece by piece, the full picture emerged. Ashley had been planning this for years, longer than I had even imagined. The early signs were there from the beginning if you knew where to look. Small charges on credit cards she shouldn't have had access to, going back to when she was still in college. A forged signature on a document that allowed her to withdraw from an account I had set up for her education. Money that was supposed to go toward tuition, but actually went toward shopping trips and vacations. She had been testing the waters, seeing what she could get away with, and when nothing happened, when I never questioned or confronted her, she grew bolder. The fake business was just the latest and most ambitious phase of a scheme that had been running for almost a decade. The total amount taken, when the investigator included everything, was closer to $500,000. $500,000, everything Derek and I had worked for, everything I had saved to secure my future, gone. But not all of it was unreachable. Ryan, it turned out, was not as clever as he thought he was. He had put some of the stolen money into a brokerage account in his own name. He had bought a car, a new BMW, that was fully paid off. He had jewelry, watches, designer clothes, recoverable assets, and Ashley herself had accounts she probably thought I didn't know about. Accounts she had opened with fake addresses and minimal identification. Diana filed the civil lawsuit in October, almost exactly a year after I first discovered the theft. We named both Ashley and Ryan as defendants. We sought recovery of all stolen funds, damages for fraud, and punitive damages for the emotional harm caused. We also notified the district attorney's office of our findings and filed a formal complaint requesting criminal investigation. The day the lawsuit was filed, Ashley was served at our house. I made sure to be home when it happened. I wanted to see her face. She came through the front door holding the papers, her expression cycling through confusion, then understanding, then rage. "What is this?" she demanded. "What the hell is this, Maggie?" I sat in my chair, calm, composed, hands folded in my lap. I had rehearsed this moment 100 times in my mind. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said. "You stole from me, Ashley. For years, you stole from me, and now I want it back." Her face twisted into something ugly, something I had never seen before. "You don't know what you're talking about. This is insane. I'm your daughter. I would never—" "You're not my daughter." The words came out quiet but firm. "You're my niece. I raised you. I loved you. I gave you everything. And you repaid me by robbing me blind. There's no point in denying it. I have the evidence. I have your notebook, Ashley. The one where you mapped out my entire financial life and planned your timeline for full access. What was that going to involve? Getting me declared incompetent? Taking power of attorney? How far were you willing to go?" She went pale. For a moment, just a moment, I saw something like fear in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by calculation. I could see her mind working, trying to find an angle, a way out. "You don't understand," she said, her voice shifting to something softer, more sympathetic. "I was in trouble, Mom. I owed people money, bad people. I was trying to protect you by not telling you. Everything I took, I was going to pay back. I just needed time. Please, you have to believe me. I never meant to hurt you." It was a good performance. It really was. A few months ago, I might have fallen for it. I might have softened, asked questions, given her another chance. But not anymore. I had spent too many nights staring at those numbers, too many hours piecing together her lies. I knew exactly who she was now. And I knew that every word coming out of her mouth was just another manipulation, another attempt to wriggle free. "Save it for the judge," I said. "I've heard enough of your lies to last a lifetime." Ashley's face hardened. The mask dropped completely. "You're going to regret this," she said. "You have no idea what you're starting. I know things about you, Maggie, things that could make your life very difficult." "Like what?" I asked, genuinely curious what fantasy she was going to invent. "Like the fact that you mismanaged those stores for years before Derek died. Like the fact that some of the money you claim is yours was actually supposed to go to me as part of my mother's estate. Like the fact that you've been taking advantage of a grieving orphan for 2 decades, using me as free labor and emotional support while hoarding wealth that should have been shared." It was breathtaking, truly breathtaking. She was already rewriting history, already spinning a narrative where she was the victim and I was the villain. She was going to fight this. She was going to fight dirty. I should have been surprised, but I wasn't. "Get out of my house," I said quietly. "Now." "With pleasure," she spat. "But this isn't over, not by a long shot." She stormed upstairs, packed a bag, and left within the hour. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't look back. She just slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows and drove off in the car I had helped her buy. I sat in the silence of my empty house and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for months. It was done. The mask was off. The battle had begun. The months that followed were brutal. Ashley, with Ryan's help, launched a counter campaign designed to destroy my reputation and undermine my case. She posted on social media about how her abusive aunt had turned on her, how I was trying to steal her inheritance, how I had forced her to work for free her entire childhood. She contacted distant relatives, former neighbors, anyone who might listen, and fed them a distorted version of events. She painted herself as the victim of a bitter, lonely woman who resented her youth and success. Some people believed her. That was the hardest part. Some people who had known me for years started looking at me differently. I heard the whispers at church, at the grocery store. Is it true? Did Maggie really treat her that way? I never thought she was the type, but you never know what happens behind closed doors. It hurt more than I can describe. It made me question myself, question my memories, question everything I thought I knew about my own life, but I didn't back down. I couldn't. If I gave up now, Ashley would win. She would get away with everything. And I would spend the rest of my life knowing that the girl I raised, the girl I trusted, had successfully used and discarded me like I was nothing. Diana assured me that Ashley's public attacks would actually help our case. "She's making herself look petty and vindictive," she said. "Any reasonable judge is going to see through it. What matters is the evidence, and the evidence is on our side." The criminal investigation had also gained momentum. The district attorney's office had taken our complaint seriously, especially after they saw the scope of the fraud. Ashley was called in for questioning. Ryan was too. Their stories didn't match, which was predictable. Under pressure, their partnership started to crack. Ryan, it turned out, was more interested in saving himself than protecting Ashley. When the investigators presented him with evidence of his involvement, he started talking. He told them everything: how he had met Ashley on a dating app 3 years ago, how she had told him about her wealthy aunt who was an easy target, how they had worked together to extract as much money as possible while she laid the groundwork for a longer-term takeover, how they had planned to eventually have me declared mentally incompetent, maybe fake some evidence of dementia, maybe just isolate me until I was dependent on them and take control of my entire estate. In exchange for his cooperation, Ryan was offered a reduced charge. He took the deal without hesitation. Ashley, on the other hand, was charged with fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. She was arrested at the apartment she had been renting with the money she stole from me. She was booked, fingerprinted, and held overnight before making bail. The mugshot was public record. Someone posted it online. Within days, it had spread everywhere. The trial came 6 months later. It was a civil trial first, since that was the faster path to recovering my money. The criminal trial would follow. I had to testify, which was one of the most difficult things I have ever done. I sat in that witness stand and looked at Ashley, really looked at her. For the first time since she had moved out, she looked different, thinner, paler, harder. She was dressed conservatively, trying to project innocence, but her eyes gave her away. They were cold, calculating. There was no remorse there, no guilt, just anger that she had been caught. Her lawyer tried to tear me apart. He painted me as a controlling aunt who had tried to replace her dead sister, who had smothered Ashley with unwanted affection while withholding love and money. He suggested I was mentally unstable, grief-stricken, prone to paranoid delusions. He questioned my memory, my motives, my sanity. It was humiliating, but I held firm. I answered every question calmly and honestly. I let the evidence speak for itself. The notebook, the bank records, the testimony from Vincent, and the forensic accountant, the recorded conversations, the paper trail that Diana had so meticulously assembled. By the time closing arguments came, it was obvious which way the wind was blowing. The jury took less than 4 hours to reach a verdict. Ashley was found liable for fraud and ordered to pay restitution of the full amount stolen, plus an additional $100,000 in punitive damages. Ryan, who had cooperated, was only liable for partial restitution. It wasn't a complete victory. I knew I would probably never recover all the money. Ashley didn't have it anymore. She had spent most of it on her lifestyle, on the fiction of success she had built around herself. But the judgment meant that her wages could be garnished, her assets seized, her credit destroyed. It meant that any future inheritance, any lottery win, any unexpected windfall would be siphoned off to repay what she owed. It meant that for the rest of her life, she would carry the weight of what she had done. And that was something. The criminal trial came a few months after the civil verdict. This time, Ashley had to face a different kind of judgment. The evidence was overwhelming. Ryan testified against her. I testified against her. Even some of her former friends, people she had used and discarded along the way, came forward with their own stories of manipulation and betrayal. The jury found her guilty on multiple counts. The judge sentenced her to 3 years in state prison with eligibility for parole after 18 months. She showed no emotion when the sentence was read. She just stared straight ahead like she was somewhere else entirely. I watched them lead her away in handcuffs, and I don't know what I felt. Relief, maybe. Sadness, too. The girl I had raised, the girl I had loved more than anyone in the world, was going to prison because of choices she made, because of who she chose to be. It wasn't the ending I would have wanted, but it was the ending she earned. After the trial, I went home to my empty house. It felt different now, not lonely exactly, just quiet, peaceful. I made myself a cup of tea, sat in my favorite chair by the window, and watched the sun set over the trees in my backyard. I thought about Patty, my sister, and what she would think if she could see what her daughter had become. I hoped, wherever she was, that she could forgive me for failing to protect Ashley from herself. I had tried my best. I had given her everything, but some people are just born with a hole inside them, a emptiness that nothing can fill. No amount of love, no amount of money, no amount of opportunity. They just take and take and take until there's nothing left to take, and then they move on to the next victim. Ashley was one of those people. Maybe she always had been, or maybe something broke inside her when her mother died, something that never healed properly. I would never know for sure. And at a certain point, the why didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the what she did, what I did in response, what came next. What came next for me was rebuilding. Vincent helped me restructure my finances. I had lost a lot, but I hadn't lost everything. I still had my house, still had my health, still had friends who had stood by me through it all. I started volunteering more, getting out of the house, reconnecting with life. I joined a support group for victims of financial fraud. It helped more than I expected. Hearing other people's stories, knowing I wasn't alone, gave me a strange kind of comfort. We were all survivors of a particular kind of betrayal. We had all trusted someone who had used that trust against us, and we were all still standing. Bruised, maybe, changed, certainly, but still standing. About a year after Ashley was sentenced, I got a letter in the mail. It was from her, the first communication since the trial. I almost threw it away without reading it, but something made me hesitate. Curiosity, maybe, or closure. I sat down at my kitchen table and opened it. It was 3 pages long, handwritten on prison stationery. She talked about her time inside, about how much time she had to think, about the therapy she was receiving. She claimed she was starting to understand why she did what she did. She talked about her mother's death, about feeling abandoned, about the anger and emptiness that had followed her for as long as she could remember. And at the end, she apologized. She said she was sorry for hurting me. She said she understood if I never wanted to speak to her again, but she hoped that someday, somehow, I might find it in my heart to forgive her. I read the letter 3 times. I analyzed every word, every phrase, looking for manipulation, for lies, for the familiar tactics she had used so many times before. And maybe they were there. Maybe this was just another performance, another play for sympathy. But something felt different about it too. Something felt real. Or maybe I just wanted to believe that. Maybe I needed to believe that some part of the girl I raised was still in there somewhere, capable of remorse, capable of change. I didn't write her back, not then. I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I would ever be ready. Forgiveness isn't something you can force. It has to come naturally, in its own time, if it comes at all. But I kept the letter. I folded it up and put it in a drawer, and sometimes, late at night, I would take it out and read it again. Not to torture myself, not to relive the pain, just to remember. To remember who we were and what we had been to each other before everything fell apart. It has been 2 years since Ashley was released from prison. She served her full sentence after being denied parole twice for disciplinary issues. I heard through the grapevine that she's living in another state now, working a minimum wage job, trying to put her life back together. The judgment against her is still in effect. Every month, a portion of her paycheck is automatically garnished and sent to me. It's not much. $100 here, $50 there. At this rate, it will take her decades to pay off what she owes. But that's the consequence she chose. That's the life she built for herself. I could feel sorry for her. Sometimes I do. Late at night, when I can't sleep and my mind wanders to dark places, I think about that little girl who came to live with me so many years ago, the one who was scared and sad and desperate for love. She deserved better than what life gave her. She deserved a mother who didn't die young, a father who didn't abandon her, a childhood that wasn't marked by loss and instability. But she also had choices. We all have choices, and Ashley made hers. As for me, I'm doing okay. Better than okay, actually. I've learned to trust again, slowly, carefully. I've made new friends, deepened old connections. I've started a small nonprofit that provides financial literacy education to seniors, teaching them how to protect themselves from the kind of fraud I experienced. It feels good to take something terrible and turn it into something meaningful. It feels good to help others avoid the mistakes I made. I still miss what I thought I had with Ashley. I still mourn the relationship that existed only in my imagination, but I don't let that grief define me anymore. I've learned that you can love someone with your whole heart and still not really know them. You can give everything you have and still be seen as nothing more than a resource. That doesn't mean love is foolish or trust is weakness. It means that some people aren't capable of receiving what you're offering. It means that their brokenness isn't your fault and isn't yours to fix. I did the best I could with the information I had at the time. That's all any of us can do. Last month, I received another letter from Ashley. This one was shorter, just a single page. She said she's been attending therapy consistently since her release. She said she's been diagnosed with something called antisocial personality disorder, and she's been learning about how it affected her behavior and relationships. She's not using it as an excuse, she said, just an explanation. She wanted me to know that she's trying to be better, that she's trying to understand the harm she caused. She asked again for forgiveness. She said she doesn't expect me to give it. She doesn't feel she deserves it, but she wanted me to know she was sorry. I read the letter once and put it away. I still don't know what I feel about Ashley. There's no simple emotion that captures it. Love and hate, anger and pity, grief and something that might be hope. Maybe forgiveness will come someday, maybe it won't. But I know this much. I'm no longer defined by what happened to me. I'm no longer a victim. I'm a survivor. And whatever comes next, I'll face it on my own terms. The truth about betrayal is that it never fully heals. You learn to live with it, but it changes you forever. You look at people differently. You question things you used to take for granted. You become more careful, more guarded, more aware of the darkness that can lurk inside even the people you love most. But you also become stronger. You discover reserves of resilience you never knew you had. You learn that you can survive things you never thought you could survive. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you find a way to turn your pain into purpose. To take the worst thing that ever happened to you and make it mean something. I raised my niece like my daughter. I gave her everything I had, and she robbed me blind. But I'm still here. I'm still standing, and I'm still moving forward. That's my ending. That's my victory. Not revenge exactly, though there was certainly that. Not just justice, though there was that too. Something more than both. Something like peace. The kind of peace that comes when you stop running from the truth and learn to live with it instead. The kind of peace that comes when you realize that no matter what anyone does to you, they can't take away your strength, your dignity, your sense of who you are. Ashley tried to take everything from me, but in the end, the only thing she really took was herself. And that, I've decided, is a loss I can live with.